Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. There was a used pregnancy test buried under tissues in the bathroom trash can. That's how it started. Not with a romantic dinner announcement, not with happy tears or hugs. Just a cheap plastic stick, still damp, hidden like a secret she forgot to keep hidden. The test was positive. But here's the thing. We weren't trying. In fact, Lorna had told me a week prior that she wanted to wait another year or two. I agreed. We were still working through things. Quiet fights, missed calls, smiles that never reached the eyes. So I stood there in the bathroom, holding that stick in a tissue like it was radioactive, thinking, why wouldn't she tell me? That thought alone should have been enough. But no, I played dumb, pretended I hadn't seen it. I went downstairs, made coffee, kissed her cheek like everything was normal. I didn't ask. I waited. 2 days passed. She never mentioned it. On the third day, I did something I still feel ashamed of. I checked her nightstand drawer. She always kept a little notebook in there, filled with grocery lists, quotes, doodles, and, as it turned out, a single torn-out sheet folded 4 times. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Saw Kieran again. We were stupid, I told him. He doesn't want a kid, obviously. Says it's not mine to keep. But it's not Edgar's either, that much I know. My name, his name, and those 5 words. It's not Edgar's either. I sat on the floor for what felt like an hour. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just went numb, completely, quietly numb. Like my body shut off the emotional power supply, just to keep me from imploding. When she came home that evening, she walked past me like nothing was wrong, asked what I wanted for dinner, told me we were out of almond milk, laughed at something on her phone. I watched her mouth move and thought, you're really gonna let me raise someone else's child, aren't you? And the worst part? She knew I would, because I'm that guy. The pushover, the forgiver, the we'll get through this type. I've always been. She knew it, I knew it. That night, I barely slept. I watched her from across the bed as she breathed like the world hadn't just cracked open. And the next morning, without even turning to face me, she said, it's not your baby, but you're raising it, so maybe stop sulking. No apology, no explanation, just that line, tossed at me like a dirty sock. I didn't answer. I laughed. Quiet at first, then louder. Not out of humor, but because it finally made sense. I packed before sunset, and I disappeared from her life. But she wasn't going to let me stay gone for long. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't leave a dramatic note or shatter any glass. I just slipped out. Took my passport, a small duffel bag, and my truck keys. The garage light flickered as I backed out like even the house itself wasn't sure I had the nerve to do it. I left my phone on the kitchen counter, screen cracked, buzzing every few seconds from her group chats and unread junk emails. I stared at it for a moment, then flipped it face down. I didn't want to see her name ever again. I didn't have a destination, just a direction. North sounded good. Somewhere with fewer memories. Somewhere with no hospitals where we'd laughed in hallways. No grocery stores where she once stole a kiss in the frozen food aisle. Just quiet, cold, and distance. 3 hours out, I pulled into a gas station, hands shaking worse than I expected. I hadn't cried, not really. But I wasn't okay, not even close. I kept hearing her voice on repeat. It's not your baby, but you're raising it. Like she was doing me a favor. Like I should be proud. Every version of my future suddenly felt ridiculous. Me, pushing a stroller, reading bedtime stories, wiping away tears from a face that wasn't mine in any genetic way. What kind of man lives that lie and calls it love? At the motel that night, I lay on the thin mattress staring at the popcorn ceiling, the distant buzz of a vending machine outside keeping me company. I hadn't eaten. My stomach turned at the thought of food. I remembered how Lorna used to sneak spoonfuls of peanut butter in bed and tease me for brushing my teeth too early. It hit me in waves, rage, guilt, sorrow, disbelief. But the most disturbing feeling was relief. I thought of Mabel, her tiny hands gripping my finger, her laughter echoing through the hallway, the way she said "dada" like it was a magic word. That part crushed me, because she didn't lie. She didn't choose. She was just born, and I loved her. I still did, but I couldn't pretend anymore. Lorna had stolen the truth and used my heart like scaffolding to build a lie. By morning, I decided I wouldn't tell anyone. Not yet. I'd vanish clean. No texts, no explanations. Let them guess, let them wonder. Maybe someday they'd piece it together, but for now, I wanted silence. I wanted space to breathe without being told I was overreacting or too emotional. I was tired of being the guy who swallowed everything just to keep others from choking on their own shame. But the world doesn't like when you disappear, especially not when you leave chaos behind. And I was about to find out that walking away from her didn't mean she'd let go of me. I lasted 11 days off the grid. 11 full days without seeing her name, hearing her voice, or smelling the soft vanilla of her shampoo that used to linger on our pillows. I'd made it up to the northern edge of Wisconsin, to a town so small they still had a payphone outside the grocery store. I rented a short-term cabin from an old man who didn't ask questions and only accepted cash. The place was modest, a single bed, a wood-burning stove, and the kind of silence that doesn't just fill the air, but settles inside your bones. I thought I could disappear there, thought I could finally breathe again. But of course, she found me. It started with a knock. Not aggressive, not frantic, just 3 soft taps like whoever was behind the door wasn't even sure they wanted me to answer. I stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, coffee cup halfway to my lips, heart stuttering in my chest. I hadn't told a soul where I was, not even my brother, who'd texted twice and then given up. I didn't move. Maybe if I didn't breathe, the moment would pass. Then I heard her voice. "Edgar, please, I just want to talk." I didn't open the door right away. I couldn't. I was too busy trying to stop my knees from buckling. It wasn't just that she had tracked me down. It was the way she said my name, soft, unsure, like it still belonged to her. I finally opened the door. She stood there bundled in the oversized scarf I bought her 3 Christmases ago, holding a baby carrier at her feet. Her eyes were red, makeup smudged, hair a little wild from the wind. I didn't say a word. I stepped back and let her in. I wish I hadn't. She walked in like she knew the space, as if she'd earned the right to cross that threshold, and placed the baby carrier on the couch. Mabel was asleep, peaceful, completely unaware of the earthquake standing in front of me. "I didn't come to fight," she said, voice cracking. I panicked. I thought if I told you the truth, you'd leave me. And I was right I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to be cold, but because I genuinely didn't trust what would come out of my mouth. I was stuck between exploding and collapsing, and neither felt productive. She continued, rushing now. "Kieran's gone. He moved out of state. He wanted nothing to do with her. He told me to get rid of her when I first told him. You were the only one who stayed. You were the only one who wanted her." I let those words hang between us, poisonous and pathetic. She wanted sympathy for choosing me by default, like I was some safe fallback when the real father disappeared into the mist. "You lied," I finally said, quieter than I expected. "You made a decision for me, and you wore it like a crown. You let me build a life on a foundation you knew would collapse." Tears streamed down her face now. "I didn't think it would matter. I thought you loved her enough that it wouldn't matter." The worst part? She was right. I did love Mabel enough. That wasn't the issue. The issue was trust. The issue was being manipulated by the person I gave everything to. The issue was realizing that the love I gave came with no protection, no honesty, no ground to stand on. She begged me to come home, said we could figure it out, said I was still her husband, and she was still mine. I looked at the child sleeping peacefully in the carrier. I had kissed her forehead every night believing she was mine. That belief had shaped everything. Now, I didn't know what to believe in anymore. I told Lorna she could stay the night, but not in my bed. I slept on the couch, not because I was being noble, but because I didn't know who I was supposed to be anymore. When I woke up the next morning, she and Mabel were gone, but something was waiting for me on the kitchen table, a letter. The envelope was unsealed, folded unevenly, and stained with what I assume were her tears. It wasn't long, but it didn't have to be. I sat at the small wooden table in that frozen cabin kitchen, with the letter in both hands, feeling the paper tremble as much as my fingers did. I read it once, then again, then once more, looking for something beneath the words, something human, something honest. But all I found was desperation dressed up as vulnerability. She wrote, "I never planned this. I didn't choose for things to happen this way. But once they did, I convinced myself it was better if you didn't know. I know that makes me selfish, maybe even cruel. But the truth is, Edgar, I saw how much you loved her, and that scared me more than anything. Because I knew you'd walk away if I told you. And you did. She was right, but it wasn't just about Mabel. It was about everything. About the fact that I didn't even recognize the woman I married anymore. She ended the letter with, "If you come home, we'll figure it out together. If you don't, I'll never bother you again." No apology, no ownership, just another emotional riddle wrapped in guilt, tied with a bow of manipulation. I folded the letter in half, once more, and slid it into the trash next to the leftover coffee filter and a half-eaten apple. That morning, I walked out of the cabin with no real destination again, just a growing awareness that I was no longer running from her. I was running from who I became around her, someone who never questioned anything, who forgave before hearing the truth, who mistook survival for love. Back in town, I stopped at a diner and tried to focus on the smell of burnt toast and the clatter of forks on ceramic. A waitress asked if I wanted more coffee, and I nodded too quickly, just grateful for a moment that didn't include betrayal. As I sat there stirring cream into my cup, I noticed a woman across the room smiling at her daughter. The child had the same sleepy look Mabel had when she curled into my chest. That's when it hit me. I wasn't grieving my wife. I was grieving the role I thought I had earned. I was grieving the man I was when I believed in something. When I returned to the cabin, it was like stepping back into someone else's life. Nothing had moved, but the air had changed. I started packing, slowly, not out of urgency, but because I knew this wasn't my story anymore. I couldn't hide in someone else's life forever. But just as I zipped my duffel bag shut, I heard a car pull into the gravel drive. For a second, I thought it was her again. Lorna, back to plead. Back to say just enough of the right words to make me feel like the bad guy for leaving. But it wasn't her. It was a man, mid-30s, tan coat, worn eyes, and when he stepped out of the car, I knew instantly who he was. Kieran, the biological father, the one who, according to her, wanted nothing to do with Mabel. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "We need to talk." Now, he didn't look like the kind of guy who breaks up marriages. Or maybe that's just what I told myself to stay sane. Kieran stepped out of his silver rental car like he had every right to be there, like I was the one intruding on something sacred. His boots crunched on the icy gravel, and I could tell from his hesitancy that this wasn't a social call. I opened the door just enough to block the entrance with my body and stared at him, jaw tight. He didn't flinch. He just looked tired, not guilty, not smug, just tired. "I don't want any trouble," he said, hands raised like he expected me to lunge at him. "I just want to say something. Then I'll leave." I didn't move. "Say it." "I didn't know she was married when it happened," he said quickly. "She told me later, after everything." I felt sick about it. I still do. I didn't respond. Let him stew in that silence. He looked down at his shoes before continuing. "She told me the baby was mine," he said. "But when she asked for money, I told her to get a paternity test. She never gave me one, so I assumed she was lying. Then she just stopped contacting me altogether. Said it was taken care of. I was still blocking the door, arms crossed, trying to piece together the timing. She told me you ran," I said flatly. "Wanted nothing to do with her or the baby." "I moved for work," he answered. "But yeah, I didn't chase her down. Honestly, I didn't know if it was even real. But then last week, she showed up, out of nowhere, said I had to meet my daughter, and that you..." He paused. "You found out." Of course she did. She burned every bridge and then came crawling to the last one that hadn't completely collapsed under her lies. What bothered me wasn't just the fact that she'd gone to him. It was that she did it after standing in my kitchen, telling me she wanted to rebuild with me, and while I sat there wondering how to start over, she was already making another exit plan. I finally stepped back and let him in. Not because I forgave him, but because I needed the truth more than I hated the betrayal. He sat stiffly on the edge of the cabin's armchair while I stood, arms still crossed. "So, what do you want from me?" I asked. He looked up, serious. "I want a test." I blinked. "You want a paternity test now?" "Yes, not because I want to fight you or take anyone away. I just need to know. I've thought about it too long. If she's mine, I need to make it right, and if she's not, then I can finally stop wondering." I didn't say anything for a long time. My mind was moving too fast. On one hand, the man was calm, measured, and seemed genuinely remorseful. On the other, this wasn't his family to insert himself into. Was it ever mine, though? "You don't understand," I finally said. "I raised that girl like she was mine. I named her. I built her crib with my own hands. I read her bedtime stories every night for 2 years. I stayed up with her when she had the flu. You don't get to show up and just ask for proof. I get that, he said quietly. I do. But you deserve to know too. And that was the line that did it, because I realized I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. I was holding on to a version of my life that may have never been real to begin with. I'll think about it, I said. But if you do anything behind my back, if you go through her, or Lorna, or anyone else, I swear to you, Kieran, I'll make sure you regret it. He nodded. Fair. He left without shaking my hand, just nodded again and disappeared into the cold afternoon. I closed the door and stood in the silence, wondering how the hell my life had unraveled this far. I thought the worst was behind me, but I was wrong, because later that night I got an email from an anonymous address. The subject line said, "Ask Lorna about the Christmas party." I stared at the subject line for a long time. Ask Lorna about the Christmas party. It was vague, almost childish, but it felt personal. My cursor hovered over the message like it might bite back. I clicked it open with the kind of hesitation usually reserved for bomb wires or test results. Inside was no greeting, no sign-off, just 2 blurry images and a single sentence. You weren't the only one she lied to. The first photo was unmistakable. Lorna, champagne flute in hand, seated way too close to a man in a dark suit. His hand was resting on her thigh like it belonged there. She was laughing, head tilted, eyes locked on his. It wasn't Kieran. I zoomed in, my heart thudding so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. The timestamp on the image, December 23rd. 2 days before Christmas. I remember that week too well. She told me she was stuck at her sister's house because of a blizzard. I drove 2 hours in the snow on Christmas Eve to drop off a last-minute gift for her sister's kid, only to find out she wasn't there. Lorna had just left, her sister said, went to pick something up. She came home late that night smelling like cinnamon and lies. I asked where she had been. She rolled her eyes and said I was paranoid. The second photo was even worse. It was taken from behind, a mirror reflection. Same night, same outfit, same man. They were in a hotel room. She had one heel dangling off her foot, dress slightly lifted, and his jacket draped across her shoulders. There was no kissing, no touch captured in the image, but it was intimate in a way that only people with shared secrets could be. I shut the laptop so fast it nearly cracked. I couldn't breathe. I felt stupid again, like I had missed another obvious trap door under my life. I had already been grappling with the fact that Mabel might not be mine, that my marriage had been built on silence and half-truths. But this felt like a rot that went deeper. How many men? How many lies? And why did I keep giving her the benefit of the doubt? I had given up everything to make things work, and she'd spent Christmas in a hotel room while I read bedtime stories to a child she told me was mine. I didn't sleep. I just sat at the edge of the bed until the sky turned from black to a dull gray. When the phone rang the next morning, I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. It was her. "Edgar," she said quickly, voice shaking. I need to tell you something before someone else does." Too late. I didn't speak. I wanted her to talk, to squirm, to guess what I knew. She paused. Then, it was just once. That night, the Christmas party. It was a mistake. I was drunk. I thought you were pulling away from me. I didn't think it would matter. I nearly crushed the phone in my hand. "Didn't think it would matter?" I said, my voice low and flat. "Do you even hear yourself?" "I'm not trying to excuse it," she said, panicked. Someone's been sending things to people. My sister got an email. I think Kieran did too. I don't know who's doing this. Of course she didn't. It was never her fault. Just like it wasn't her fault she lied about the pregnancy. Just like it wasn't her fault she let me raise a child she never planned to tell the truth about. "I'm not coming back," I told her. "And you better pray no judge sees those pictures, Lorna." She went silent. I hung up before she could respond. But something still didn't sit right. Not with the photos, not with the anonymous email, and definitely not with the timing. Someone out there wanted me to see all this. Someone who knew enough to destroy her life with precision. And they weren't done yet, because by that afternoon, the photos were online, public, and posted under my name. I didn't post the photos. I need to start there, because when everything blew up, that's the first thing everyone assumed, that I had some kind of bitter revenge plan, that I was airing out our dirty laundry like some deranged ex-husband with a vendetta. But the truth is, I was just as blindsided as Lorna, maybe more, because I had no idea who would go that far in my name. The account looked like mine. Same profile picture, same username, even old posts from years ago copied word for word. But it wasn't me. I hadn't logged into that forum in months, and now there it was. 2 grainy images under a caption that read, "This is what betrayal looks like. Merry Christmas." By the time I saw it, the post had already gone viral in 2 different relationship subreddits. My inbox was a mess of messages from strangers, some offering sympathy, some cheering me on, others accusing me of humiliating the mother of a child. Her workplace found out. Her sister called me, screaming. Kieran sent a one-line text. "You didn't have to drag her like that." I didn't respond. I just sat on the edge of the bed, laptop open, hands shaking, wondering how far this was going to go. Then the messages started hitting my old email account, the one I hadn't touched since college. Someone had guessed the password, I hadn't changed it in years, and forwarded me a screenshot of a chat between Lorna and the man from the hotel room. His name was Garrett, married, 3 kids, worked with her. The chat was disgusting. Not explicit, just cold, mechanical. Like I was never even a person in their story, just an obstacle, something to lie to until it became inconvenient. They joked about the hotel, about how she almost got caught, about how the husband's probably too busy reading bedtime stories to notice. That one hit like a punch to the ribs. But what scared me the most was that whoever had leaked the photos and broken into the email had all of it. Years of messages, attached documents, saved photos, receipts, and they were feeding it into the world one piece at a time, like they were building a case. But for who? Me? The courts? The public? I didn't know. And that uncertainty kept me from sleeping. Lorna called again. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail sobbing, saying I had ruined her life, that I had destroyed any chance she had of keeping custody of Mabel. She begged me to tell everyone it wasn't me, but it was too late. The court of public opinion had already reached its verdict. And deep down, I wondered if this was karma using someone else's hands. But here's the twist, and this is where it gets weird. Later that night, I got a message from an unknown number. It simply read, "You don't know me, but you should have listened to your brother when he warned you about her." That hit me harder than anything else. Because my brother, Simon, had warned me. He'd said Lorna was secretive, said she was too good at acting innocent. We fought about it 2 years ago, and we hadn't spoken since. He didn't come to our wedding. I thought he was just jealous or bitter. But now someone else was dragging him into this from the shadows. I tried calling him, but his number was disconnected. His old email bounced. It was like he had vanished too. I realized something terrifying that night. I wasn't just dealing with a betrayal. I was part of a game someone else was playing, someone who knew too much, someone who wanted everyone to burn. And I had the sinking feeling that the final move was coming soon. The final piece came in the form of a brown envelope, dropped into the mailbox of the cabin I hadn't told anyone I was staying at. No return address, no name. Just my name written in thick black ink, block letters, deliberate and cold. I took it inside, sat down at the same table where I'd once read Lorna's letter, and opened it with the same mix of dread and numbness. Inside was a printed transcript of every message Lorna had exchanged with Garrett, with Kieran, even with a third man I didn't recognize. Dozens of pages, highlighted sections, dates, screenshots, receipts. But at the very top was a single sheet, handwritten in blue ink. It said, "Edgar, you were the only honest one. The only one who didn't lie. You deserve to know. I hope this gives you peace. It's done now. Burn it if you want. Just don't go back." There was no signature, no clue who sent it. But somehow, I didn't need one. Whether it was Simon or someone acting in his name or some stranger who'd seen the truth and decided to intervene, I didn't care anymore. What mattered was that I finally had closure, and not just with Lorna. The next morning, I booked a one-way ticket to Oregon. I'd always dreamed of living near the coast, where the air smelled like salt instead of regrets. I found a quiet town and rented a small place by the bay. Got a job at a local print shop. No one there knew my story, and I didn't offer it. They knew me as the quiet guy who brought donuts on Mondays and fixed the jammed copier without complaining. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I walked every evening down by the water, learning how to breathe in a world that no longer carried the weight of someone else's lies. It took time, but the nightmares faded. So did the urge to check her social media or look for updates. I let go of the anger. I even let go of the sadness, because what I had now was better than revenge. It was peace. And as for Mabel, I don't know if I'll ever see her again, but I hope she grows up kind. I hope no one ever lies to her the way her mother did to me. And if someday, when she's older, she finds this story and realizes who I was, I hope she knows I loved her the best I knew how, even when everything else was false. I'm not broken anymore, not angry, not lost. I'm just free. And sometimes, freedom is the best ending you can hope for. Thanks for staying with me through this story. Now it's your turn. What's a moment from history, big or small, that changed the course of someone's life forever? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own story, right here on Reddit Confessions.